Hello, everybody. It's good to see all of you. It really is. We're looking now at 1 Corinthians chapter 1. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, beginning with verse 18. And we're going to read down to verse 25. Now, let me prepare you. This is a very difficult passage. It's very thick. It's very deep. Now, I believe, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians, that you can understand all things. I believe that. Nevertheless, we're not scientists. We're not philosophers. We're just people. And so when we start talking about science and philosophy, we get lost really quickly. Our eyes start glazing over, and I think that if this passage was done correctly, it would take about 2 hours of teaching to bring across all the material. But I don't have 2 hours. And I'm preaching, not teaching. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch on three of them, the major things here in this passage, recognizing that a lot of it's going to be left on the floor. And you accept that, right? Because you understand how preaching works. And I'm also going to try to make sure that, I understand you can understand all things, but I'm going to try to make sure that even though you may not be a scientist or philosopher, maybe we can help get through this together. Let's begin to read it now in verse 18. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, and this is a quotation now from Isaiah chapter 29, and by the way, it's a very loose quotation. It's so loose that Paul completely rewrote it. I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. The intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Where is the wise person? Where is the teacher of the law? Where is the philosopher of this age? Now, if you look at the message, you'll see that what Paul is saying here is that these very intelligent people have no answer. That's what he's saying. They have no answer to life. Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not know Him, God was pleased with the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe. Jews demand signs, and Greeks look for wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to the Gentiles. But to those whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. The gospel, the good news, that's what gospel means, the gospel is very clear and it's very simple. It is this idea that God has been reaching out to man all through human history. And He has chosen to do that work of reaching out through His Son Jesus, who died on the cross. And what God has said is, if you believe in Jesus and His death, then God will forgive you your sins and give you a whole new life. A life that is now and a life that is forever. C.S. Lewis said that I believe in the gospel in the same way I believe in the sun. Are you listening? Not because I see it, but because I can see everything by it. And what Lewis was saying, and sort of what Paul is saying here, is that he understands all of life. Lewis understood all of life. Paul understands all of life by the light that's shown by the gospel. So we believe the gospel explains everything. We believe it tells us about every part of life and who we are and what we're about. For those of us who are saved, who have been forgiven, this makes all the sense in the world because we can see everything by the gospel. But those people who don't believe, they can't believe. Because they don't believe, they're dying. But they don't believe, they're blind. Because they don't believe, they can't believe. Now, let me tell you what I've done over the years. This is my own testimony, I love the gospel so much. And it's changed my life so much. I see everything by the gospel that I really don't understand why people who don't believe don't believe. And it seems so clear to me. Why don't you believe? I don't understand. And of course, they don't believe because they can't believe. I don't believe, though, that they don't believe. I'm using the word believe a lot, aren't I? If English isn't your first language, it must sound kind of strange. But I don't believe that people don't believe because God made them that way. John tells us in his gospel that God is not willing for anyone to perish. And I believe that. I believe that God doesn't want anyone to die spiritually. Now, by the way, yesterday was the one-year anniversary of my widowmaker heart attack. Yeah, we had a party at my house, and they sang a song to me, "Happy you survived a heart attack to you. Happy you survived a heart attack to you." Well, the paraphrase, somebody somewhere who said this, and nobody knows who said it. They said, "I've been rich, I've been poor. Rich is better. I've been dead, and I've been alive. Alive is better." It's much better being alive in Jesus than being dead and not be able to understand Him. God doesn't want anyone to be dead. He wants everyone to see. And what I think is God is always working in people's lives to open their hearts up, help them understand and see. My wife recently, she realized she needed to wear glasses. She could see far away pretty well, but she couldn't see up close. And I was always reading things for her because I can't see far away, but I can see up close. So she decided to get contacts rather than glasses, which reminds me of a joke. A lady is speeding, and she stopped by a police officer, and I like to see a license. She hands him a license, says, "Here," and looks at her. She's not wearing glasses. Says, "You have corrective lenses. You're not wearing your glasses." She says, "I have contacts." He said, "I don't care who you know, you're getting a ticket." Thank you. So she has contacts now. We're in a restaurant, and she's looking at the menu, and even with her contacts in, she can't see what's there. I said, "Well, maybe it's the color of the print." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, some people can't see certain colors." I said, "Have you ever had a color blindness test?" She said, "No." Now, every time I've ever gone to the eye doctor, every single time I've gone, they give me this little book. In the book are circles, and inside the big circle are smaller circles, and the circles have smaller gradations in color. And hidden in those circles with the smaller gradations of color are other circles that have a number in them, like 7 or 9 or 1. And if you look at this pattern, and if you can't see that particular color that's inside of the larger circle, you can't see those little circles that have that color. That's the color blindness test. I bet you've taken that, right? She's never taken it. They never gave her the book. And so I immediately looked up online, color blindness test, and in the restaurant, I gave it to her. And she passed with flying colors. So I don't know why she couldn't read the menu, but it wasn't because of the color it was printed in. But this is exactly what we're talking about. It really is. If you can see the 16 million plus colors that are supposed to be visible to the human eye, you can pick out the colors in those strange and wacky charts. But if you can't see all 16 million colors, then you have some kind of color blindness. You may be completely colorblind. There are some people, and I feel for them, because color is a wonderful experience, who only see in shades of gray. So there are people who are perishing, they are dying spiritually, and they will one day die physically. And for whatever reason, because of their own hardness of their heads or the hardness of their hearts, or because of their own sin or wherever they are, and by the way, let me tell you, I am convinced that most people don't believe because it's inconvenient. They don't want to change their life. They don't want to give up things that make them happy. It's not because of intellectual reasons. It's simply because they don't want to be a different kind of person like their sin. But for whatever reason, they cannot see it. They can't see it. So Paul says the gospel for some people makes no sense. And the reason it makes no sense is because they have made it a conscious decision not to believe for whatever reason. They cannot see it. Their belief feeds their unbelief. Now, this story, the gospel story, has as its center a great truth. And that truth is the cross of Jesus. And in these modern times, Christians are becoming apologetic about the cross. And I think you can understand some of this because the cross is an instrument of capital punishment. And I know you can't really appreciate this because we love the cross so much, but it's like some religion somewhere hanging a little model electric chair around their necks. Electric chair? How could you think your religion is based on an electric chair? That's a terrible instrument of cruelty. How could you believe that? Well, God got our attention, and He showed us His love because He would not even spare His own Son for death, but gave Him up for us all. He died on that cross, and as He was lifted up on the cross, everyone in the world looks to Him, even if they don't believe. So Paul says the whole thing about the gospel is the cross. Now, he mentions two kinds of people here who don't like the cross. These two kinds of people, though, even though you may think that it's a religion that he's talking about, actually describes the only two possible responses that a person can take who doesn't believe. Paul says Jews demand a sign. That what they want is a miracle. What they want is an emotional experience. That what they want is something that happens in their heart. They want to feel it. They want to be so impressed by some kind of supernatural event that they have a special feeling about who they are and what they're facing and what they're having to believe in. On the other hand, the Greeks, the Gentiles, demand wisdom. And what this kind of person is, this intellectual kind of person wants is a formula, a proof, something which is intellectually based that proves to them God exists. Although Paul says in passing that God has chosen not to let human wisdom be what saves us. In other words, even though, and I'm going to emphasize this maybe again in a moment, even though the gospel is logical and smart, if we could reason our way to God, then we would have earned our own salvation by figuring it out on our own. And God has chosen not to do that. And so what this kind of person, intellectual kind of person wants, they want some kind of proof. So some people want the heart and some people want the head. But God didn't play with the heart. He didn't play with the head. He showed the cross. And the cross, because of what it is, doesn't make us feel good. It doesn't answer our intellectual problems. Now, I met my wife almost 47, 48 years ago. I know it's hard to believe this. I know it is. I look so good. I look so good. She looks even better than me. But the first time, now I want to show you how, I'm exaggerating here. I'm exaggerating. I'm making things black and white. It's not like this at all. It's something like this. Because I'm a romantic. I am. I'm a hopeless romantic. And she's really nuts and bolts. Things have to be black and white for her. She has to be this way she is. So I saw her in the lunchroom at Old Dominion University, and I fell in love on the spot. I was ready to send out invitations, get the tuxedo. I was ready at that moment. And this is true. And to be quite honest with you, I was based entirely on how she looked. Did she look good? She did. On the other hand, my wife had a list of things she was looking for in a mate. Number one on the list was her mate had to be taller than her. You're not laughing at that. I don't know why, but she was almost 5'11", and almost every man she met was shorter than her, and she didn't like that. She wanted to make sure that he was taller than her. And then she had that's how deep her list was. But it went on from there. And so when I met her, and I fell in love right away, it took a long time to convince her. A long time. It took months. Because she had to have the logical aspects all worked out before she'd make a decision. And she's still like that. She is. And so our whole marriage has been me chasing her and her running. That's the whole thing. So anyway, so I'm heart, she's head, right? And this is the kind of thing Paul is talking about here. There are people who are heart, and there are people who are head. And this reflects itself in our denominations. The denominations that are all about feeling and emotion, the denominations all about head. And that's okay, that's all right, because God appeals to all kinds of people. But you have to understand something. The cross is the cross, whether we feel it or we know it. It's the cross. This is the message that is preached, that is believed. That's what it's all about. Let me go back again now and say that where is the wise man of this age, Paul said. What he was saying was that these intellectual ways of approaching life, they have benefit. Listen, I'm glad that there's a doctor who knows how to insert stents. I'm going to go see him tomorrow, by the way. I'm glad of that. So knowledge has a place. It has a place. But you see, when you go to the doctor and you say, well, I'm depressed, the doctor says, well, you have a chemical imbalance. There's a pill. And that may help temporarily, but it will not solve the problem permanently. And let me talk to you more about this. The universe seems to be designed. Now, I think it seems to be designed because it is, right? And I don't want to leave you behind on this, but in philosophy and science, this is called the anthropic principle. The anthropic principle, based on the Latin word for man, anthropos, says that the universe seems to be finally designed, in fact, for life, in fact, for human life. And I believe that, and I see that. But there are a lot of scientists who say, well, we don't like the fact that it seems to be designed, and then, of course, that leads you to a creator, and we don't want to accept the creator because that means that we can't figure it out on our own. So we believe instead that there are an infinite number of universes. No observational proof, meaning we've never seen it. We have no way of knowing if it's ever can be proven to be true, but we believe it. And with an infinite number of universes, what that means is we have an infinite number of chances to get one designed for life. Are you catching this? That's called the multiverse. Everywhere you go now, including Avengers, you get the multiverse. Every single place you go, you get the multiverse, even though it cannot be seen, cannot be proven. It's simply people who are very intelligent saying, I can't accept a God. And I got to find some way to get around this inconvenient idea that the universe is finally designed for human life. But Ridley Scott, the great director, Alien, the scariest movie I ever seen. My hair started falling out when I saw Alien the first time. Alien, the scariest movie I've ever seen. Ridley Scott did the Alien movies, did Gladiator. He did a prequel to Alien 7 years ago called Prometheus. And in Prometheus, you know, he examined spiritual issues alongside of scientific issues. So he wanted to get ready for this. So he invited, in 2010, he invited some of the world's leading astrophysicists. That is, these are physicists who study the universe, the astronomers, to his house, 10 of them. And he asked at dinner time, how many of you believe in God? Raise your hand. 10 of them there, 4 of them raised their hand. So, you know, if you ask general population, 7 out of 10 will raise their hand, 4 out of 10 scientists. I want you to see, all I want you to see is this, that there are some very wise people who recognize that they can have a limit to their wisdom. They get to a certain spot and they can't answer all the questions. And you can't either. So Paul made a choice. Are you listening now? Paul made a choice. When I went to you Corinthians, I knew that you were a city with great intellectual ability. I also knew there were Jews there who wanted to feel and have emotion. But I made a decision when I went to be with you to preach Christ and Him crucified. That's the whole message. And so you leave it up to God to preach Christ and Him crucified, and He'll take care of those looking for a feeling, and He'll take care of those who want an intellectual answer. You just preach Jesus. That leads us to the last idea. Don't be ashamed, therefore, about your faith. So you walk around and you think to yourself, I'm just an ordinary person. I don't have a degree in physics or mathematics. And I hear from scientists on television scoff at God and believe that I can prove how the universe came into existence, which he can't, really, he can't. I've looked at the arguments, he can't. Scientists are very arrogant. And so you start being apologetic. Well, I'm just a simple Christian. Maybe I start doubting because, this guy's a lot smarter than me. He doesn't believe. But you don't be apologetic about your faith. You have every right to believe in Christ and Him crucified. Every right to believe that. Every right. In fact, Paul and I want you to catch this. This is one of the coolest things, not just in Corinthians, but in the whole Scripture. Paul got so wrapped up in this idea that, there's people who want a feeling, there's people who want an intellectual answer, that they want these, and I just preach Christ. And by the way, Paul said by the foolishness of preaching, he didn't mean that preachers were foolish. He didn't mean that preaching was stupid. He meant that people think that preaching itself is stupid. There are people who think that. But Paul got so much into it, all of a sudden, he just got overwhelmed, and there's no grammar here at all. He says, Christ, the wisdom and power of God. There was no lead up to it. There was no grammatical connection. He just got overwhelmed and just shouted it out. Christ, the wisdom and power of God. Because he knew that it could answer every question of the cross, no matter what anybody asked or said. So last night, I'm on my porch listening to the Braves game, which is one of the great joys of my life. I have these headphones, but I love these headphones that are noise canceling. Debbie hates them. And I love them not because I can't hear her, but because I get into them and I don't hear anything else. I don't hear sounds out, and I don't hear honking horns or whatever. And I'm listening to the game on the radio, and the Braves were leading 3-2. Top of the ninth, Rocky scored a run on luck, simply luck. Braves couldn't score in the bottom of the ninth. Free baseball. Extra innings. I always say that. Free baseball. I yell it in the house. Free baseball. And so it's 10th inning, right? The Rockies don't score on top of the 10th. And Freddie Freeman steps in, bottom of 10th, first pitch. Now, in the right field area of SunTrust Park is a restaurant called the Chop House. It's a 2-story restaurant. Freddie hit the first pitch in the second part of the Chop House. I walk off home run, bottom of 10th. Baseball is a wonderful game. And I don't care what anybody says. And then you come by the door like you did last week and go, baseball! Hey! I don't understand that. I never will. There's no sport that has a moment like a walk-off home run. The game ends just like that. In soccer, you're in tied, you have free kicks. What's that all about? What is that all about? I don't get this. You play for 90 minutes, and then you settle it by kicking a ball or a goal, and who gets the most ones wins. I just make it, flip a coin for goodness sakes. But in baseball, a guy could come up and hit a home run, the game is over. That is so cool. And I shouted, I jumped up out of my chair, I yelled, Braves win! Yeah, I did. My whole neighborhood heard it. Because I was excited about it. It made me happy. I'm not ashamed of the Braves. Are you getting this? Paul is reflecting on the gospel and on those who demand a sign and those who demand a word of knowledge. He's reflecting on the people who are scoffing. He's also thinking about how he sees everything by his faith. and he just lets it go. Christ, the wisdom and power of God. Yeah.